Welcome to Big Talk, everyone. We're here live in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, Umar-Farouk. As always, let's put the conversation on the road tonight. Nigeria, particularly since 2004, when the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, came on board, has intensified efforts to ensure that it continues to minimize instances of corruption across sector, whether it's private or public. Today, we understand that Nigeria has spent close to 2 decades intensively pursuing, if you like, initiatives to ensure that corruption, especially where it is systemic and endemic, is caught to its barest. Every other day, people across board find reasons to want to assess the amount of progress that we've recorded as a country so far. Government after government, it has been one form of talk or another about anti-graft efforts. Has Nigeria won the war just yet? Is Nigeria winning the war? Is there any chance that Nigeria will win the war against corruption, especially as we have come to see within the public space in particular? Today is a former minister in the government of former President Muhammadu Buhari, who is in the news for the wrong reasons. Who knows who else it will be tomorrow? In the meantime, the conversation is around Sadiya Umar-Farouk, former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management in this country. This conversation has been a long time coming, but it will appear it has come to a head now on account of new allegations that have emerged. My guest tonight is Professor Biodun Adeniyi of Bayes University. Thank you as always, Prof, for coming.
Thank you, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I should say Happy New Year for a start.
Yeah, same to you.
Great.
Wishing you all the best.
You know, every time I have conversations around corruption, the first thing that crosses my mind is whether we're just talking or we're actually bringing sincerity or purpose to the fight. Are we doing that, Prof?
There are different levels at which we can actually look at it. There's a book recently written by Professor Ademola Adebo. And of course, it dissected corruption. He was writing from his own experience working in government, how the thing is actually systemic and endemic, how it will always be wrong if we think that we can resolve the problem by identifying 1 or 2 individuals. You know, the book ended up submitting that there's hardly any institution, any structure, even any individual, without the potential to be corrupt in this system. And of course, it's because of the way the system is structured. And that's why over the years, even from the late 60s, you know, you keep seeing names of individuals be rightly or wrongly mentioned, associated with corruption, and yet we haven't been able to get anywhere. Yes, you mentioned a name, you know, Hajia. Hajia Sadiya's case remind me of when Farida Waziri was EFCC chairman.
Right.
She actually went to Atahiru Jega, who was INEC chairman then, and told him, then a release has just been made to INEC, about 12 billion or so. So he told Atahiru Jega that, look, people who are coming to you, you know, they are not coming to you now for trickery reason, but each time they look at you now, they are imagining that 12 billion is in your pocket.
Right. Because
12 billion is associated with INEC. And it leads us to the discussion around deficit in public trust. You know, the fact that the government and the led, there's a huge trust deficit. So if you see anybody presiding over some huge, relatively huge budget or plenty sums of money, relatively again, so to say, allocated to the ministry, to the department or agency, you know, we often assume that the person is complicit even before trial. And I think that's what I imagine that Hajia Sadiya is facing at the moment. You know, even before you know, trial, because the ministry was responsible for poverty alleviation, some kind of social intervention,
conditional cash transfer
and all of that. Then you just imagine, oh, there's no way somebody's hands wouldn't have been in the cookie jar. And maybe before you get to your specifics, you know, I've read the reports, I've read everything. The only thing is just to be careful with media trial, because it can be very dangerous, very damaging. I've read some media reports that actually says that, yes, people reportedly involved in the investigations by EFCC are heads of agencies under her watch, you know, but they didn't go beyond the threshold that they were expected to stay underneath, you know, in compliance with the Public Procurement Act 2007. So if they didn't go beyond it, it means that they didn't, permission, approval was not sought. Then there was the approval of the federal.
So in which case she cannot be held accountable?
No, yeah, in which obviously she cannot be held accountable. But it's often salacious or sensational for us to link these allegations with people at the top, you know, because somehow it can be very entertaining. Now, we're not necessarily saying that anybody is guilty or innocent, but we're just saying that, you know, because of the atmosphere that we've always existed in over the years, it is so very easy for us to accuse ourselves, you know, and in doing so, we are undermining the criminal justice process. You know, we are defaming ourselves, you know, and deepening the distrust that exists amongst the citizens. We cannot necessarily tar the entire citizen with one brush. Yes, we know that predominantly many Nigerians are corrupt, but there are still innocent people. People who are conscientious, about, who are concerned about actual service delivery and are not interested in dipping their hands into the public till, which is why the only avenue for us to verify this is the criminal justice process, you know, through regular trial, you know, court system, you know, prosecution possibly, you know, through adjudication process. Let's just sum it that way. And of course, the campaign, you know, for us to stop media trial has been on over the years, you know. You will not know how it feels, God forbid, or except your name is mentioned wrongly, you know, for the wrong reasons. It can be very disheartening, very disillusioning.
Even traumatic.
Very traumatic. Sometimes it leads to, God forbid, it leads to people's death. And I think that's what we should be careful about, particularly in the case of this lady. Remember that she's a very young lady. She's got a future. She's very promising. And she should just be allowed to have a way through the process and not unnecessarily maybe malign her, just like we often tend to do in many other respects. You know, now so many investigations are going on, even with the use of Forex in Lagos, Dangote, about 50-something companies are also said to be undergoing some kind of
waivers granted them by CBN.
But we need to be systematic about this.
About the approach.
So that we will not discourage people from public service.
And damage our own reputation as a nation.
That's right, as a nation. Because we are talking about attracting foreign investment, and if we're just condemning the entire fabric of the Nigerian system, then how do we expect people to trust us and bring their funds here?
So, Prof, I want to talk to you about a couple of elements that are fundamental to this conversation around Sadiya Umar-Farouk, which is the fact that even long before now, we had seen accusations and counter-accusations. I mean, a lot of controversy surrounding the school feeding program. We're seeing things, questions being asked very critically about issues concerning the conditional cash transfer and so on and so forth. Is it not possible that this trial now, whether it is a media trial or whatever kind of trial it is essentially a fallout from all of those allegations?
Yeah, very good question. You see, that ministry was responsible for disaster, humanitarian, and relatedly poverty, you know, which means that for somebody who is poverty-stricken, if you are buying the person property, you know, you are wasting the person's time. What it means to be poverty-stricken in our time is that people are even struggling to feed.
Right.
And the only way you can assist the person is provide for the person to feed in the first instance. So government was intervening, and it requires cash. You know, there were reports. I read reports because of these things happening. I took my time to read many reports just to have an understanding. And when you invited me to, I said, okay, let me have an understanding.
Right.
And I saw that it was actually a multi-stage process in the dissemination of the cash, of the opportunities created by the federal government through that ministry that she headed. And of course, to the state governors, who were saddled with the responsibility of appointing state coordinators, and through people they call aggregators. You know, there were some kind of leaders responsible for the coordination at some other levels, maybe local governments or ward, I'm not too sure now. But of course, it was just cascading down the line to get to the people. You know, and eventually you had a situation where, you know, headmasters were involved, or heads of schools were involved, and funds or resources would be given to them and to hand over to parents or to children. And there were reports, you know, I saw pictures of people who were really poverty-stricken, such that it was only the food that they were given through this mechanism, you know, that they were able to feed their family. Because they would take the food from the school and take home. And that was the only means through which it was possible to get the family fed on particular days. Very traumatic and, emotional experience, reading those things and imagining the level of poverty that we are in. And of course, to some extent, to a very large extent, appreciating the essence of that intervention, through the instrumentality of that ministry. Do not forget what I said earlier, that anything that has to do with money, cash, people often read meanings into it. And we're an underdeveloped country. We're not a developed country where the bulk of the people believe in the banking system. Okay, we are still underbanked, but people don't even believe in the bank because they are worried about the banking deductions. You and I know how much they take away from your bank in interest, with different kinds of charges at the end of the month or so. And of course, sometimes for every transaction, they also charge you. How many people can afford to lose those charges? People who hardly have, maybe they have just 5,000 in their account and they are planning towards it, and they have to go through deductions alone. So not many people can afford it, especially in this country. And of course, when people are underbanked, when people don't have bank accounts, how else do you mitigate their plights, and when they are in poverty, if not direct transfers? And of course, when direct transfers is involved in terms of physical cash, and we easily read meanings to it. That's what I
say. Somebody must have compromised.
Yeah, somebody must have compromised, or you just believe that, like the Hausas will say, which means that there's nobody that you will give money to that will not help himself to some
from it.
Yeah, if my loose interpretation is correct. But these are just assumptions, and it may not necessarily be true, which is why I think that the woman deserves some level of exoneration, until otherwise proven. And of course, you can also elevate that, to the tendency, to our general tendency to, condemn people, convict people in the court of public opinion in a situation where the person is innocent. I've never met her in my life. I just knew her by public reputation.
Like every Nigerian.
Most people. How many people do you want to know? But I mean, we have seen cases where people were prosecuted, condemned in the court of public opinion, then the court again will now condemn the person. I mean, lawyers talk about double jeopardy. There cannot be anything worse.
There's this James Sokoete angle to this narrative. Yeah. How damaging or otherwise is that?
Well, I read that one too, where the person was supposedly given contracts and distributing to, and I didn't see any relationship with the woman, with the minister.
Prof, you and I may not have, we may not be privy to what he may have told the EFCC investigators.
Well, we're not privy to it, but I can also go by the denial of the former minister.
Right.
That she has never met him.
That she doesn't know him.
She doesn't know him. And that's a very absolute, categorical statement.
Clear statement.
Clear statement. You do not make that kind of statement if you're not sure of yourself.
Right.
And it's a very dangerous thing, because the same woman, who I understand has been freed now, can also come out and say, I know you. But, the woman went all out and said, I've never met him. I don't know him. He never worked for me. In any kind. So that's a very confident statement that anybody can make, and how more confident do we expect somebody to be? Well, the point we're making is that we should be systematic, we should be procedural, we should grow our system, grow our institutions, realizing that the legal process, the criminal justice process is also an institution, even though it's not a physical one, but it's an effective and productive one that helps in the regulations of systems and societies. That's why we're not in the state of nature, where life is brutish, short and nasty. We're in a civilized world, and the one element that helps us to define civilization is the element of law. And law implies that there should be fairness, there should be justice, there should be equity. You should be heard. And being heard is also systematic. It goes through a process, through the legal process. That's if the crime agencies have enough reason to prosecute in the first instance.
The spokesperson for the EFCC, Oyewole, has told media outlets that, look, the 37.1 billion naira being bandied may not even be the correct figure in the end. According to him, investigations are still ongoing. That it may even be higher than that. Is it not, I mean, should this not be in wraps on the part of the EFCC in such a way that the investigation and all of the issues around it are discrete, totally discrete, rather than be...
Well, that's maybe one of the things that we keep talking about. You know, I want to also believe that there are limitations in the way we fight crime.
Right.
Limitations in terms of the operational abilities, capacities, you know, expertise of our crime fighters, you know. And of course, I might want to also excuse them, you know, because they may not be perfect, they may also be learning, and sometimes they may also pander unconsciously to the pressure tactics, you know, of public opinion. Right. Public opinion can have some very serious weights, you know, so they might find it very difficult to navigate themselves away from the weight of public opinion, which comes, you know, creating a line of, creating a direction for them, you know, but their own skills, their own willpower will now have to come in for them to stick to the rules and not be affected, you know, by some people have described as the mob tactics. You know, I remember how dangerous the mob can be. You know, Julius Caesar, the fate of the Roman poet Cicero. You know, where he was mistaken. You know, for being one of the conspirators. You know, they eventually killed Julius Caesar. You know, that Mark Antony and Octavius Caesar fought. You know, in the Battle of Philippi. You know, it was as a result of mob action that led to the death of the Roman poet. You know, mob action, you know, the mob is feeble, fickle-minded. They can act on impulse. Mob can be unreasonable. You know, sometimes they can hardly be right because their tactics and strategy, you know, is against set rules. It's against institutional framework. Now, we're not saying that public pressure or public opinion is completely useless, but we're also saying that, yes, public opinion might be useful, but we should be designing. And we can only be designing through structured process. If we subject every accusation or every semblance of guilt, you know, to due process, due diligence. In any case, our law even says that you are innocent until you are proven guilty. But sometimes we just get carried away. We want to name and shame, even when somebody is innocent. You know, you may not know it until you feel it.
You know, Prof, there's an angle to this whole thing that is quite worrisome, which is the fact that, take for instance, Sadiya Umar-Farouk had come into office in August of 2019, was there until virtually the end of May 2023. That was almost 4 years. How is it that we are not able to track and detect all of these anomalies and infractions until the individual has left office and then it becomes some sort of a script or something?
Yeah, that's the politics of the process again. You know, and that's why we should always be circumspect when we are reacting to some of these things, because all these people who are there now, you know, only God knows what will happen to them when they leave in 4 years. If as somebody that is even there, there's the Honorable Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, better I do, without prejudice and with the greatest respect. As I was coming, I saw something being posted, you know, on my WhatsApp, you know, that she approved 500 and something million to be paid into a single person's account. You know, which law permits that? You know, it's not possible. You know, you're not supposed to.
So the question is, who is tracking that now?
I mean, it's there, stamped and everything. It's there on my WhatsApp. I saw it on one of the paid to one person's account. You know, that the person is project account for vulnerable people in a number of states. You know, there's no law that permits that, because if you are in public procurement, you are supposed to pay directly into the account of the suppliers, and that kind of money is definitely above the minister's threshold. So if that document is correct, there's guilt. There's
ideally that should go to the FEC, I suppose.
I mean, because the money is much. You know, I mean, there's already guilt. There's already a reason for investigation somewhere. You know, but because of politics, you know, that may not happen now. Maybe until in the future, if the wrong kind comes in and think that the book should be open. So if we continue in this circle of damaging people or impugning on the character of people only because we disagree with the person or we don't like the person, then we'll just be replicating sorrow, tears and blood in a situation where we should be chary. I remember very clearly, in the wake of the ouster of President Goodluck Jonathan, Bishop Kuka came on air and he had that sense of reason and he was very strong on it. He said, we should be careful with the way we are demonizing President Jonathan on corruption and all of that. What are we talking about? We've been talking about corruption since the 1960s. That we shouldn't paint any regime as innocent or as immaculate. And the same Buhari regime, under whose tenure Jonathan was demonized, is now being demonized directly or indirectly by a new regime. So you can see the cycle continue.
Of the same party?
Yes, which is showing, if it was someone else, another party that came in, other than an APC president, it would have been a different ballgame. It would probably have been worse. But even because we're not seeing a situation where it's even the same party and we are seeing this semblance of demonization, which is to say that if we're not careful, we're just recycling bad blood, bad blood which is actually inimical to growth, and of course, ideal standards, the kind of level we should be in as a country existing in the 21st century, where we want to do things in a way that we say is top-notch, in a way that we say is speak and span. The point we need to make at this point is that we're not exonerating anyone, but we're just saying that we need to be careful with extrajudicial or pre-judicial trial, irrespective of how we feel about a corruption in the land.
As we begin to tie it up now, Prof, I just want to talk about something that goes back a bit a few years ago. I mean, there was a time under former President Muhammadu Buhari when we had Lai Mohammed as Minister of Information. At that point, there was this talk and a lot of razzmatazz around the fight against corruption. And then a certain list had been released by the federal government through the Minister of Information, as it then was, Lai Mohammed. And a couple of individuals, very prominent Nigerians were mentioned, including a former national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, who I understand at the time had to go to court to exonerate himself, and he did get a judgment in his favor. Now the question is, how is it that we don't have a system where, if you like, a culture, where people can say, well, I had been accused of X, Y, Z. Now evidence has substantially shown that I'm innocent. And then you go to court and seek redress. Why don't we have that sort of thing? So that, who knows, that could change the narrative.
Yeah, because the institution is weak, and sometimes when we accuse people, it's often political. And that's the point we've been making, that it shouldn't be political. It should be substantial. It should be fact-based. It should be devoid of emotions and sentiments or primordial considerations, and that can be funded only on reality. Not because you do not like somebody's face or you don't like somebody's party or you think somebody is egoistic or somebody has pride, and then you want to get at the person. Because if you are getting at somebody wrongly, you are getting at the person's humanity. And do not forget, the dagger can turn against you at some other times. That's how life moves. Very simple law of karma. What goes around comes around. We have to be careful with these. I remember, yes, you were right. President Buhari came out and said 10 billion was shared by former National Security Advisor. What has happened to that case now? So many other things have gone on there. But what about the names of those people that were damaged in the media?
Who probably were even innocent.
Even probably were even innocent. What has happened? So do they only have to wait for time to erase it from the memories of people? Or is there no way we can begin to nip these things in the bud if we are very careful? With media trial. I know that sometimes this thing has worsened because of digital media, social media, the fact that the space has been liberalized. Everybody is now a publisher, reporter, people posting, people are now empowered even in their closets. It has also given room to closet nymphomaniacs, psychopaths who just take delight in damaging the reputations of people. Well, again, we have to be careful. There has to be some control mechanisms. If not at the level of the individual, it should also be at the level of the state. The state should definitely not pander, to the tactics of these semi-mob who are obviously still struggling to become. But now they just take delight in bringing down those who have been fortunate or privileged, or those who have got into some heights by dint of hard work.
I've spoken about this on a very final note, Prof, with some people here and there, just in 1 minute. And they're saying, if and when this case, I mean, these allegations around Sadiya Umar-Farouk eventually finds its way into courts, it's going to drag on like we've seen with several others, including former NSA. That's
but nothing has even
mentioned.
they're
just saying if, with a big if. I mean,
of course, because
it's going to drag on. And I mean, in 1 minute, what should the EFCC learn about this by way of, first of all, showing themselves strong as an institution that is independent and subject to the rule of law?
They shouldn't be carried away.
No emotions.
No, by media reports. Because nothing has been established against the woman.
Just yet.
At all. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The 37 billion they are talking about is only in relation to an agency under her. Nothing has been attributed to her. The agency under her, and they didn't exceed a certain threshold. Even the woman they are talking about, because it was her ministry, that's why people just imagine and link that with
That's the one that was invited by
so nothing. So that's why I'm saying that the whole thing is just unfortunate. People should take responsibility for their action. But if somebody does not have any responsibility, why dragging the person's name? Just because you have a fantasy about somebody, maybe you don't like the person or you like the person, no, it shouldn't be because I like you or I don't like you. It should just be about facts, you know. Because we're all humans after all, we've got emotions. And, some of these things can be very damaging. And if we continue to damage ourselves for no reason, then we'll just become like a banana republic. And where bile and beef reign supreme.
Hopefully we do not turn out to be that. Incidentally, Prof, this is a long drawn-out conversation. And I'm sure there's a chance you and I will talk about this again sometime soon. And that's a wrap on Big Talk. Thank you everyone for watching. I'm Umar-Farouk here at Global Television. We're live in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. I'll see you again.